I'm joined now by House Intelligence Committee Chair Congressman Mike Turner, who represents the Ohio district where former President Trump spoke last night. Thanks for joining us this morning. The former president was in your district campaigning for a Senate candidate that you do not support, but you have endorsed President Trump. What's your reaction to comments like that?
I think, first off, I want to congratulate you, Martha, that you correctly identified that the president's statements concerning bloodbath were about what would happen in the auto industry if actually the Chinese manufacturers who were coming into Mexico were permitted to import into the United States. Of course, I've read the transcript. As you said, I was not at the rally. But it is incredibly important that that be accurately portrayed. I think certainly there are statements that he makes that many Americans would not agree with, and many Americans would agree with it. When you talk about what's happening at the border, this is absolutely a crisis that's created by this administration. 8 million people have come across the border, almost the entire population of Ohio. Director Wray of the FBI saying that this absolutely represents a national security threat, that there are people who have come across the border who have ties to terrorist groups and organizations. We just last week had a hearing about this in the Intelligence Committee that was a public hearing, so the public could hear this threat.
But Congressman, I understand that. I understand the crisis at the border, and it's something we have covered again and again. I'm talking about former President Trump's comments calling them not people and animals.
Well, I, of course, disagree with those in the past. I think the American public disagree with those. But I do think that people see that Donald Trump is the only candidate in this race that's going to be able to fix this crisis. Joe Biden created the crisis at a border. We've seen nothing like it. 8 million people. His own FBI director saying it's a national security threat, that we have the highest threat of a terrorist attack in this country right now as a result of the people who come across that border.
Did you support the border package on the Hill?
No, it did not. It would not have fixed the problem at the border. In fact, it would have codified Joe Biden's policies, allowing millions of illegal aliens to come in across the border every year. That is a result.
I want to move on to another comment.
That's a result of Biden's executive orders. He opened the border, and it's he has created this crisis.
We could go over what President Trump did and President Biden did, but I want to stick to these comments for a minute, and just one more if we can. He's also called those who stormed the Capitol, and you heard that so-called January 6th choir. He's called them hostages and patriots. What effect do you think that has on his supporters? It was President Trump who wanted his supporters to go up on the Hill on January 6th. Does that have an effect on people when they hear those words?
Well, as you know, he did not call for the storming of the Capitol. And we have had a number of these cases that there have been questions concerning how those cases have been prosecuted and the individuals, where there have been cases even overturned. Now, you would think, of course, that Donald Trump would have very strong emotional feelings about the individuals who have been in jail and have gone to prison over these.
Do you support those comments? Are they hostages?
On January 8th.
Are they hostages? Are they patriots?
No, I don't believe they're hostages. I believe in our judicial system, and I believe, though, Martha, as you've seen, because you've reported them, some of these cases have been overturned. Some of even the legal construct of the basis of a number of these cases has been overturned. This is going to be, a continuing legal process, and this president obviously has very strong personal views on this.
Let's move on to TikTok, and talk about your bill. That this is one area you defied Donald Trump on because he supports TikTok. That bill could potentially ban TikTok. You say it's a national security concern. I know you had that classified briefing. What can you tell us to make it more clear to Americans why this is a problem?
Sure. Well, Martha, I think, we have to first start with that China as a country is not like us. It's an authoritarian regime that has self-identified as an adversary to the United States. It has banned Twitter. It has banned Facebook. It has banned YouTube in China. It understands the power of social media and social media apps, and it certainly seeks in a number of illegal ways to obtain the data of Americans that it can use as part of its perpetration of this greater surveillance society that it uses to control its own population. When President Xi stood next to President Putin in Russia, he openly stated to the world what his intentions were. He said that we, the two of them, are going to bring about change that hasn't happened in 100 years. That's the battle between authoritarianism and democracy, and that's certainly what we're seeing in China's both economic, its propaganda, and certainly its military buildup that is part of its self-declaration as an adversary of the United States.
Congressman, is there recent evidence that TikTok is sending a significant amount of data about Americans to China, to the Chinese government?
Well, Martha, what you see is a structural relationship for which there is not divisions, and there are great concerns about the individual privacy and issues of data between TikTok and the Communist Chinese Party. But what you have even more importantly here is that this is a propaganda tool. These algorithms, these influencing through social apps, being in the hands of a self-declared adversary of the United States, one that has banned TikTok, banned Twitter, banned Twitter, banned Facebook, and banned YouTube, understands the use of these tools to be able to manipulate a society. And that certainly is one of the greatest concerns that we have. We
just have a very short time here, but you had a lot of TikTokers up on the Hill this week, and TikTok apparently supports a minimum of 224,000 jobs in this country. What would you say to those Americans who might lose their livelihood?
Well, I don't think they'll lose their livelihood. They have obviously undertaken a livelihood that is communicating to people through social apps and social media. And this is not a ban on TikTok, as you know. This is actually a piece of legislation that requires that the Chinese ownership of TikTok be divested, so that we would sever that relationship between Chinese ownership, the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party that is of such troubling concern. As you know, India has previously banned TikTok over the exact same concerns. These are concerns that as you look at what China is doing around the world, their propagation of the surveillance society, their even illegal means in which they're acquiring data on Americans and people around the world, their use of propaganda, their own banning of Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube because of their concerns of the voices of democracy being heard, you can see what a great concern this is to our country.
Okay, thanks so much for joining us this morning, Congressman. Always good to see you.
Thank you, Martha.